This is the story of a Canadian student's visit to the new town of Crawley.
Sunday. This is my diary of what looks like being a wonderful week. As we came through the clouds, I looked down and saw England below me at last. This is my first visit outside Canada, thanks to the student grant that is paying my fare to come over to study Crawley Newtown in Sussex, and thanks to my English aunt and uncle for offering to look after me for a week. Just 7 days to learn everything I can about one of Europe's most successful planned communities. My Uncle Stan and my Aunt Vivian and my younger cousin Martin were there to greet me at Gatwick Airport and to carry me off for the short drive to Crawley. My professor back home at the university had told me that a student of town planning like me could learn a great deal from Crawley. I knew, of course, that the British government had created 8 new towns in a ring 20 to 30 miles around London to help solve the housing shortage after the war. To do this, the government had appointed a development corporation for each of the new towns. During the drive to their home, Uncle Stan and Aunt Vivian told me how they had lived in Crawley since his employers had decided to move out from central London nearly 20 years ago. They had never regretted the change from their previous cramped apartment to a decent house with a garden of their own. Their only son, Martin, was born in Crawley and is now in his last year at school, in what the English call the 6th form. Their house is in the West Green neighborhood, not far from the center of the town. And there to greet us was Angela, the second of my 3 cousins. Monday morning. Armed with a letter of introduction from my professor, I went straight to the impressive new town hall and asked for the planning department. It seemed that they were accustomed to receiving visitors who came to study the town. The planning officer, Mr. Carter, was expecting me, and without delay began to explain how the area designated for the new town had included the original villages of Crawley, Ifield, and 3 Bridges.
The London to Brighton Road and the pre-war Crawley bypass, the London to Brighton Railroad and the Mid-Sussex Railway all ran through the area and provided natural dividing lines for the 9 square miles of the new town. Crawley Development Corporation's master plan was based on 9 residential neighbourhoods, grouped radially around the town centre, plus an industrial estate at Manor Royal to the north of the town, where a variety of companies now give employment to more than 19,000 men and women. Each residential area has its own shops, primary school, churches, public house, and social amenities, many based on the neighbourhood community centre.
Later, Mr. Mixioner, the council's housing manager, took me around to see the different types of homes that have been built.
Although there are some apartment blocks and maisonettes, the bulk of Crawley's present population of nearly 70,000 people live in individual houses with their own gardens. The maximum amount of grass and trees has been retained or planted to give an open, spacious appearance wherever possible. Detached, semi-detached and townhouses are mixed together. There are no less than 265 different types of dwelling available for rent and for sale.
At midday, I went to the town center to meet Angela outside the big store where she works. She walked me around the bustling streets, full of mothers and children. This looks like a young town.
Most of the major British retail groups have come to recognize Crawley's prosperity, and in the shopping centre, there's as great a variety of shops and stores as you could expect to find in a much larger town. Indeed, some of the multiple and chain stores that at first were doubtful of the sales potential of Crawley have revised their views and acquired more floor space to meet the growing demand. In spite of the busy roads and the inevitably heavy parking, plenty of room has been left for the pedestrian. The elegant Queen Square, with its extensive paved area and attractive planting, provides a decorative focal point at the centre of the town.
Literally, a few yards away is the original High Street, with its characterful old buildings and a real English coaching inn, hundreds of years old, famous ever since Crawley was a stopping place on the coach run from London to Brighton. And for me, there was my first drink of English ale. After lunch, I went to that invaluable source of local information, one of the town's 2 weekly newspapers. Mr. Collins, the chief reporter, had lived through the development from the very beginning, and he told me something of the early years.
Not everyone had welcomed the proposed transformation of the quiet little town. The planners were pioneers in those days and had to fight for their principles. Under the New Towns Act, Crawley Development Corporation set about turning its master plan into reality in 1948, by which time the legal battles were over. At that time, the population was only 10,000.
On the way back to Uncle Stan's place, I looked in at the fire station to watch a practice drill. Crawley's fire services are provided by the West Sussex County Council. That evening, Uncle Stan told me how much better working conditions are for him and his colleagues than they were before his employers moved out from central London. His firm were among the first to come to the Manor Royal Industrial Estate, which was opened in 1950.
The industrial estate is close to the railway goods yard and is placed so that heavy road traffic going to and from London doesn't have to pass through the town. On the 400-acre estate, there are 85 companies operating in a spacious setting. Purpose-built plants or office buildings may be designed to the individual user's requirements, but must still conform in specification to the overall plan. Other industrialists have preferred to rent Crawley's standard factories. There's a great variety of industry at Manor Royal. In addition to a number of light engineering plants, there are operations as different as pharmaceuticals, electronics, aircraft flight simulators, and costume jewellery. And there's ample work for women as well as men.
Tuesday. Aunt Vivian walked me over to Gossip's Green to meet her married daughter, Mandy, who lives with her husband and their 2 little girls in a typical, smaller rented house. Mandy told me that the present policy in the town is to encourage more ownership of previously rented homes. I was interested to see how this economical accommodation, planned in the traditional British small house layout, compared with low-budget dwellings back home in Toronto. Within easy walking distance, even for the kids, is the neighborhood shopping center, with all the basic shops necessary for day-to-day requirements. The town center, with its larger stores, is only a few minutes away by bus. Mandy told me how the town's extensive medical facilities include an admirable child welfare service, with clinics for kids and babies conveniently located to serve the residential neighborhoods. Mandy also leads one of the town's 10 preschool playgroups to help other young mothers who have to leave their children while they go out to work. Mandy's husband, Aubrey, is a teacher at West Green Primary School. Altogether, there are 28 primary schools, including 3 church schools, in the urban district council area. Their total population is about 9,000 pupils. On Tuesday afternoon, I went over to 3 Bridges to meet Cousin Martin at Hazelwick School. Like the high schools back home, there is plenty of emphasis here on sport for both boys and girls. And like the other schools in Crawley, Hazelwick has acres of sports fields around it. Mr. Moore, the deputy headmaster, kindly offered to show me around so that I could see the excellent modern buildings and equipment, starting with a truly magnificent library.
Hazelwick is one of Crawley's 3 comprehensive secondary schools provided by the West Sussex Education Authority. There are also Roman Catholic and Church of England secondary schools. The total of secondary school places is about 8,000, and the level of educational facilities is exceptionally high. From the earliest days of the Crawley development, the County Education Authority gave high priority to the building of new schools. As a result, there are few towns in Britain where the schools are so well sited, so handsomely housed, and so fully equipped. This is a necessity in a young community where children of school age represent about a quarter of the population. While there's considerable emphasis on the sciences, the traditional arts subjects are also thoroughly catered for.
As we walked back, Martin told me about the provision for further education, in which he will soon be participating. Crawley College in the town center has places for more than 5,000 students and offers to young people embarking on their careers instructions in a variety of commercial, business, and technical subjects. Around tea time, Martin and I met Angela at the town's new swimming pool. This championship-sized pool will one day be part of an extensive sports center which the Urban District Council is planning to develop. Already there is a large sports arena nearby with an all-weather practice area. Wednesday morning. I had an appointment to see Mr. Tregel, Chief Executive and Clerk of the Council, for a brief talk about the future of Crawley.
In 1956, Crawley became an urban district, and the new council took over responsibility for local government services. Development of the town continued until 1962, when Crawley Development Corporation was wound up, having largely completed the building proposed in its master plan. Its assets were transferred to a new government-appointed agency, the Commission for the New Towns, which still owns and manages most of the property in the town. Crawley's population is expected to rise by natural growth alone to about 85,000 in the 1980s. The planning authorities are now studying potential growth to meet the needs of expanding industry and the development of Gatwick Airport.
At lunchtime, Angela took me to the town's fine bowling alley. To my surprise, she beat me soundly at a game that I had always considered to be a North American speciality. As a consolation prize for beating me, Angela took me on a picnic, Wednesday afternoon being early closing time for the stores. The lakes at Tilgate Park are gloriously peaceful and seemingly remote from the bustling town. But in fact, they're only a little over a mile from the center. In each residential neighborhood, there are parks and recreation grounds. And I learned that the council's parks department looks after a total area of nearly 600 acres of open spaces. That evening, my uncle and aunt took Angela and me to a lively show put on by one of the local amateur theatrical groups. It seems that music, drama, and dance flourish in the town in spite of the attractions of television. After the show, we all went for a drink in one of the smart new pubs that have been built as part of the individual social amenities of each neighborhood. I got them talking about the social life of the town, which seems very active, and about the range of leisure activities that Crawley offers. They each have their own spare time hobbies and interests, but the variety available to them truly amazed me. From flower arrangement to football, from the most popular sports and pastimes to the most specialized, there seems to be an association, or group, or a club in Crawley to cater for it. Thursday morning. Mr. Mictioner, the housing manager, took me along to see some examples of the purpose-built accommodation for old people that the council provides, and to chat with some of Crawley's senior citizens.
Crawley is still essentially a young town. The average age of the present population is under 30, and nearly 1/3 of the total are under 20. Yet, like every other town in Britain, Crawley must provide for the growth in the number of elderly people that is taking place in line with the national pattern.
On Thursday afternoon, I was privileged to meet Mrs. Carman, a former chairman of the council and a notable citizen of Crawley. She showed me some fascinating old photographs of what the little town was like in her parents' day. Even today, the countryside is right at hand, and many of the most picturesque old buildings and rustic vistas have been carefully preserved, as Angela showed me later that afternoon. That evening, I took Angela to the movies. I guess I'm lucky to have a cousin like her to help me with my studies. Friday morning, and my last full day for study. This time transport was my subject, and I took a look at the road and rail communications for myself.
Crawley is situated 31 miles south of London on British Rail's main line to Brighton, which is 23 miles away on the coast. There are more than 80 miles of roads within the 6,000 acres of the town. Bus and coach services, operated by both London Transport Country Bus Services and by Southdown Motors, serve London, the south coast, most of the surrounding towns, and of course Gatwick International Airport, 4 miles to the north. Within Crawley itself, there are several circular bus routes and others bisecting the town, so that journeys between the residential neighbourhoods and into the centre are easy and quick. In a prosperous society like Crawley, car ownership is on the increase, and in common with most other places, the town is tackling a parking problem.
Later that day, I looked in at the council architect's office to see the model of the sports hall, which is to be built near the swimming pool on the site of the 12-acre sports centre near the heart of the town. I learned also about the pattern for controlled future development and how land is released for new residential or industrial building only within limits of planning control. That afternoon, I went back to the town hall for a talk with Councillor Davies, chairman of Crawley Urban District Council. What he told me and what I heard in the council meeting afterwards threw into focus the achievements of the years since 1947, when it was first decided that this group of 3 quiet villages should be developed into one of the first new towns in Great Britain. Clearly, all new towns provide a desirable alternative to the increasing congestion and continuing outward spread of our crowded cities. But Crawley has done much more than that. Not only has a pleasing planned environment been created in which all may live and work in comfort, but the town has developed a warm character and personality of its own. Here is no sterile pattern for living regardless of human values. As I assembled my notes, I began to feel that Crawley could be a place where I would be happy for my children to grow up. Saturday. I don't like goodbyes, and I did my best to look cheerful when the family came to Gatwick to see me off back home to Canada. Home? It almost felt as if Crawley had become my hometown. Not only had I been made welcome by the family and everyone whose help I had sought, but my study of Crawley had given me an insight into it, sufficient for me to be sure that I liked it and would want to come back again, and not just because of Angela.